to Dr. Lilian Katz, please. You're famous. She's a leader in the field of early childhood education, a professor emeritus at the U of I, and a truly delightful woman, as you will find out. She's authored more than 150 publications about teacher education, child development, and parenting, including, for 13 years, is that right? A monthly column for Parents Magazine. She's lectured in all 50 states and around the world, and at age 83, just got an invitation to speak in her 57th country. Dr. Katz, welcome.
Thank you.
Tonight, we want to hear more about your personal story, because she has lots of them to tell. You're from England originally, yes. Right? And you said that your life was defined by World War II. In 1939, just a few days before war was declared, you and your twin sister were among more than 4 million British children evacuated to the English countryside. Tell us why.
Well, I've learned a lot about this since then. When I was 7 years old, I didn't know what war was. And my mother took us to school one morning, and the school was full of children. And they put us on London buses, some of you know what those are like, and drove us out to the Paddington station and poured us into trains. And the train stopped at every village from London to Bristol, and people came and took us. And that was called evacuation. This happened 2 days before war was declared. And I was 7, and I was with my twin. And a lot of people think that it was frightening. It wasn't. It was an adventure. I'd never been on a train before. And besides which, I got away from my mother. Because what she always said to me, not to my twin, but to me, sit up straight and blow your nose. And things like that. There are more other things that she said. And like, you were born with a question mark on your face, she said to me. Sorry.
This was done because of the Nazis bombing,
the Nazi, right? Yeah, they were anticipating the bombing, which happened. And so they took children out of every large industrial city to countrysides. And there were 670,000 children on that day evacuated out of the city of London. And my twin and I were 2 of them.
You were given something on the train, right? To take with
Yes, that was funny too, because each child was given a little shopping bag about this high, and inside of it was a cube box with a gas mask in it. And we had to practice wearing the gas mask. Actually, we had quite a bit of fun with that because we looked awful. But it was a very serious matter. And there was also a small piece of chocolate about this size in the bag, and an orange, which was very unusual in Britain. And even today, it's still hard to get oranges. But when we were children, you could get leeks and celery and potatoes and things like that, but not oranges.
You ended up staying with a couple, right?
Yes.
In Bristol,
Yes.
Is that right?
No, not in Bristol.
Oh,
Bristol's a big city. Oh. No, my twin sister and I ended up in a small village about 95 miles west of London. It had only 6 houses. The British used to call council houses. We would call them low-income houses. And 1 big mansion, which we could spy in, but we couldn't go into. But anyway, and the people who took us, their children were grown and were in the Air Force and the Navy and so on. So they were doing their duty for their country there.
Did your mom get to visit you very much?
Well, one main visit, wait a minute, can you back up on the other picture a minute? That's me and my twin when we were about 2.5. And on the right is me. And on the left is my twin. Next picture, my mother came once to visit us while we were evacuated, and we were about 8 years old. And on the right is my twin. On the left is a picture of me.
How long were you there?
We were there for 2.5 years. We would have been there longer, except the woman who took care of us died in the middle of the night one night. She just up and died. And was completely unanticipated, but she spent most of her time smoking. You Americans, I'm not kidding you, that's true. Anyway, so my mother came. By that time, the Blitz was over. So my mother came and collected us and took us back to London just in time for the rockets to begin, and that was pretty scary and pretty frightening. But that's where we were. And
we have a postcard
yes.
that she sent to you.
Yes, and this is a really strange story. About 2 months ago, I got an email from someone I don't know, never heard of, who said that he or she, I don't know what it was because it was a foreign name, went to an auction, and apparently it was an auction for postage stamps, and found this postcard, which my mother wrote to us on the 30th of April, 1941. And he or she found out where I was because my maiden name is on there, and whoever it was did a Google with that name. And of course, a whole lot of my publications and books and articles have my maiden name. And whoever it was found me and told me about the postcard, and I gave him or her the address, and I have it now, and it was so moving. Just very, very moving. And you can see, I was amazed. My mother was learning how to type. She grew up in Paris, and her handwriting was beautiful French handwriting. Her English handwriting wasn't appropriate. But she was learning to type, and she wrote, "Still with a lot of love and kisses till next time, cuddling both my girlies from Mom." And I just couldn't imagine she would ever say anything so nice. And I think it was also a different time when scolding was the main thing that mothers did with their girls.
How often did she write to you while you were
Once a week she sent a postcard because there were no telephones. And it was the only way that the family that took care of us knew that she survived the air raid of that week. My father was evacuated with a factory. He was a tailor, and the factory he worked with made military uniforms, and they were sent up to the north of England. So my mother was alone, but there was no phone, and they didn't. How would you know she survived the air raid? And these postcards were part of it. And whoever sent it to me took the stamp.
So after the war, you all survived, right? Your family
Yes.
immigrated to the U.S.
We did.
First New York, which your parents didn't like, right?
That's
Then
right.
to Chicago to see some relatives, and then you eventually Southern California. They liked it there, I take it?
Yes, very much. In those days, Los Angeles, you could actually see the mountains. And my mother, her father's brothers and sisters all lived there, and they had children and so forth and so on, and they were wonderful. And there was no way we could go back to England. My father wanted to, but once you were in California, in those days, it was really beautiful. There wasn't smog. This was 1947. And my twin sister and I signed up to finish high school. Shall I go on with that? Yeah. Sure. And that was interesting because I had gone to the Burlington School for Girls in London, which was founded in 1699. And the uniform hadn't changed much. And one of the things, I was thinking about this today, I'd kind of forgotten, we were never allowed, while we had our school uniforms on, to be seen eating in the street. And once a month, a nearby shop, as we called them, had ice cream. You had to buy it and put it in your pocket and run home because you were not allowed to be seen eating it. But anyway, yes, so we got to California.
To California, yeah. And tell us what happened right before you graduated from high school.
Well, yes, I signed up to go to high school, to finish high school, and the April before my commencement, our father died of a heart attack. He was 51 years old, totally unexpected, just a total shock. And about 3 weeks after that, one of my teachers came to me and she said, "I sent 2 of your essays to someone who's interested in helping you, and I'll take you to meet this lady." I didn't know anything about this, but I had written quite a lot about war. And I think that's what was in, I wish I had the essays, but I don't. But anyway, so she came that Sunday, and we drove out to a little town southeast of Los Angeles called Whittier. I'd never heard of it, but anyway. We got to this house, and there's this little old lady, 88 years old. She was in the first graduating class of Bryn Mawr, which is in Pennsylvania. And this lady said to me, I read the essays, and if thee is admitted to Whittier College, I will pay thy tuition. And she was a Quaker, and that's how she talked. And that's how I got to go to college. And it was just amazing. And I just would add one, when I tried to thank her, she said to me, thee needs the help, and I can give it. That's the end of that discussion. Changed my life totally.
Yes?
Yeah.
So then you met your husband while you were in college?
Yes, at the end of my sophomore year, one of my classmates who lived in the San Francisco Bay Area said to me, look, we all took jobs during the summer holiday working in insurance companies and filing paper and stuff. Remember paper in the old days? So she said, why don't you come home with me and we'll get a job in the San Francisco area. So we did. And within a week, she and I went to a celebration of some kind in Berkeley at the International House. And this young man introduced himself to me, and he told me his name was Boris, and I knew immediately he was Russian. And I told him all the Russian that I knew, like, I'm hungry, it's time to go home, and things like, because my mother's first language was Russian, and I was always interested in languages. And then he sat down at the piano in that big room and played a Chopin ballade, and he was a wonderful pianist. And that was it, I mean. But let me also add one thing about him. It turned out that he was actually born in Moscow in 1923, I think it was. And his parents, he was the only child, and it was terrible then. It was Stalin Russia, terrible. And his parents decided they had to get out, but it was illegal to leave the Soviet Union. There was no way, no passports. But his parents spent their days and nights making neckties, and they made enough money to possess small diamonds, and you could go anywhere with those. So they got on the train in Moscow to Vladivostok, 2 weeks to take a train across Siberia. And they had trouble with him because he was 8 years old and he wouldn't shut up. And he told me the story, that his mother kept getting him to shut up because he kept saying, we're going to Shanghai, and if the police found out, they'd be arrested. So anyway, so they got to Vladivostok, and then they got on a train, and they went to Shanghai, and they bribed their way into China with these diamonds. And he grew up in Shanghai. He got there at the age of 8, and he came to California at age 24.
And you met?
And I met him. And the other thing that's kind of interesting about our time together is that in the days he grew up in Shanghai, it was an international city. And he lived in what was called the French concession, but he went to British schools. That's how his English was so good, because he spoke Russian at home and Chinese on the bus. But he went to British schools that were exactly the same as the ones I went to, but mine were in England. And we had the same examinations, the same textbook, the same history, the same errors, and so forth. But his were in China, mine were in England. It was amazing.
Now, there's a story involving your mother and him when
Yeah,
you met.
well, that's right. My mother was a very gifted violinist. She was a natural musician. She was amazing. She could tell you exactly which airplane it was by the tone. She had perfect pitch and so on. But anyway, she played the violin, and when we were evacuated, she got me and my twin started on music lessons, and I stupidly chose the violin. But anyway, so I played the violin too. But anyway, so my mother and my husband played sonatas, piano violin sonatas together, beautifully. It was just beautiful. And she turned to me one day and she said, you know what? You're lucky. Love is not only blind, it's deaf too. You'll get along. And she was right about that, because he and I played together for almost 50 years.
I'm thinking, think I know why you didn't miss her that much when you were, no.
Yeah, right.
Anyway.
Yeah, got it.
So you and your husband were married for 52 years.
Yes, yes,
And he passed away 9 years ago.
yes.
Tell us what your son said to you after that.
Oh, my oldest son, Dan, who's very much like his dad, doesn't look like his dad, but has his father's qualities, said to me, Mom, it's so hard without Dad. And I said to him, it should be. And he said, yeah, it should be.
You've raised 3 children
Yes.
together.
Yes.
Oh, I wanted to ask you first, I'm sorry. What do you miss most about him?
About my husband?
Your husband, yes.
Well, I thought about this on, what's today? Saturday. On Thursday, I came home from lecturing in Chicago, and I flew from O'Hare. And I've done this a million times. I have 5 million miles on just American Airlines. And I was coming, as most of you would know, you come down the escalator, and for years, he was always there waiting for me. It's very hard that he isn't. And I thought about that. What was the question?
Oh, sorry, yes.
Yeah.
So your children, you have 3 successful
Yes.
children. Tell us what they do.
My eldest son, he's going to be 60 in September. I don't believe it, but he is. He is a television news anchorman at the NBC television station in Evansville, Indiana. He does the morning news. And if you ever go down there and you watch the morning news, the handsome guy is my Dan. And he's so much like his father. He's loving and warm and caring. He's just wonderful. And then I have another son who is 58? No. Yes, that's right. I think he is. And he's a cellist. He did a bachelor's degree in the music department at the University of Illinois, and then he went to the Conservatory of Music in Cincinnati and did a master's in cello. And he's also a guitarist and a singer and a poet. A wonderful voice, and he's very, very creative, and by the way, very poor, but otherwise he's okay. But he's a great cellist, and we played together for a long time.
And you have a daughter.
And yes, we have a daughter. She's just turned 57. Yeah, just. And she's a singer, and she's been a singer for a long time. Lovely voice. And her husband is also a singer and a saxophonist and a pianist, and so they do music together, and they make their living creating radio commercials. So that's what they live in Cincinnati, but none of them live here, darn it, but anyway.
Oh, that's too bad. So you're the parenting expert. What do you hope they remember about you as a mom?
I thought about that. I hope they have nice memories. As far as I know, they do. But I want them and other parents also, and I hope that I've given them that experience of knowing the difference between being understanding and being indulgent. Very important, especially in American culture, not so much in other countries, and I go everywhere. And the other thing I wanted to mention, which I learned in the process of raising my 3 kittens, is that everybody agrees. There is no doubt that all children need to feel loved. But what we've learned, I think in the last maybe 20 years, they benefit from feeling loved by someone they can look up to. And they cannot look up to adults they can manipulate and boss. And it's a very important distinction. And I read an article in one of the Ed Psych journals recently about a psychologist who overheard 5 first graders making fun of their parents who you could twist around, and also of their teachers who kept saying they were awesome. So you got to be careful. You keep the amount of information low, but make it informative and true and meaningful.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.